Today I'm going to go over using silicone molds for nail art. They've been coming out with more and more cool themed little nail art molds lately, and I've been loving them. Even though I hardly even do 3D nails, I'm still loving them and buying them and playing around with them. So there are definitely some tips and tricks to using these. They seem like a quickie way to get super detailed stuff, and it is, but there is still a lot of work involved with getting these to turn out nice. So let's do it. We are going to be casting this crow today in lieu of the nail tutorial I'm going to be putting out for this crow nail. That was from my Halloween set that TikTok decided not to show anyone on the week of Halloween. Whatever. So it's a great example because it has some super skinny, tiny things that stick off of the main body, and it needs to be black, which is also going to be, it's a dark color. It's going to be problematic for molds and getting everything to cure properly. So that is where my cool little hack comes in to make it so you don't even have to worry about it. The first thing to know about silicone rubber is it has an electrostatic charge to it. So it attracts everything, dust, hairs, so you are constantly cleaning it. It's not you, it's the silicone. What you can do is use some static remover clothing spray on the molds. Just do like a quick, spray on them. You don't have to soak it, and then just set it aside for a couple minutes and it will dry on there. And that is really going to help as you are working with it, depending on your environment and how annoying that is to you if little hairs and things are getting in there while you are trying to fill it with gel, etc. A light dusting of baby powder or like cornstarch will do the same thing, but then we are kind of cloudying up the mold and you're not going to be able to see through various sides as much. So I kind of like the static cling spray better. The next thing, this crow on this nail, I did this in so many layers of black to try to make sure that it was curing all the way. I was even using my tiny lamp to get in there at weird angles because, the overhang kind of lip on some of these objects. And still, it oozed out of it at a certain point after the nail was completely done. So I highly suggest if you are doing especially something with black, you use a transparent black. You are going to have to do multiple layers anyway. It shouldn't matter in the end. This is going to be your only fighting chance to get that gel to cure. And you still are going to have to do that in very thin layers. But we can get the best of both worlds if we do the tiny, intricate, thin parts with gel and then do the rest with black acrylic powder. Here is a crow with gel feet. They are really nicely formed. The gel can handle those paper thin areas of the mold, which it still doesn't seem like it should when you're looking at it, but they come out. But in this, the acrylic has a hard time with those areas. I'll show you two I did with just acrylic. Their poor little feet are a little misshapen. They're a bit weak. They're noodly, and they can't really, they're not fully formed. So that's why we do the combo. It's the perfect way to solve this problem. Okay, can you see the reflection on the right-hand side edge of the mold there? I just sprayed that. There you go. You can kind of see it reflecting there in the light. Just sprayed that with the spray. You can see I'm not dousing it, but you see the sprinkles on there. That will dry in a couple minutes. The static spray is super important for using the acrylic powder because that powder wants to go everywhere but in the divot of the actual shape you are trying to cast. Here's what will happen if you just try to open pour acrylic powder onto these molds. This is a mold where I have not sprayed it with the anti-static spray. Watch when I start to just try to tippy tap that stuff into that. See? Just flings itself onto the sides there. And I found every time when I was doing this, I got about as much powder outside of the actual shape I was trying to cast as I did inside. So it just became this huge mess. So we are going to do a little system here that's going to make it a lot neater. We're going to put the powder in these teeny tiny little bottles that you can get. I got these off of Amazon ages ago. I'll have to find the listing again. It comes apart. It has a big enough opening in the bottle. We just take the acrylic powder, just take a little sheet of paper, fold it in half, pour some of the powder in there, and then that's a quick, simple way Or if you have a teeny tiny funnel, you can do that too, but hopefully we all have some paper sitting around. And you can just have pre-filled little bottles of maybe a few colors that you use a lot, or the colors you want to use to backfill molds that you've maybe painted 1 or 2 layers of gel. You know, clear, whatever, any color of acrylic, anything will work. I like to dry pour the powder into the mold and then add the monomer. And I add it with a syringe with like a blunt glue tip on it. You could use an eyedropper. I just find it easier than trying to use the big brush. I'll use the brush later for cleanup, but for initially, I like to use some sort of dropper system to just wet all of the acrylic powder. Okay, let's start this casting. I'm going to put out a little bit of my transparent black, and I like to apply gel to silicone molds with a very thin toothpick. I found these hors d'oeuvre toothpicks that are bamboo, that are super thin at the grocery store. One thing to be careful about, these silicone molds are pretty, cheapy silicone molds. Some of them can be really soft, not all of them are. So just don't be too stabby with the toothpick, because you don't want to mar the surface and wreck your silicone mold. Just be a little gentle with it. But I'm basically going to take that, I like to spread the mold open to get into those teeny tiny areas. And then I'm basically using that toothpick to draw into that space all the way into the little tip, because what we're trying to avoid is air bubbles. We're going to paint that in. I keep just scooping up little bits and painting it into his feet. And then I'm going to turn it over and look on the other side. And air bubbles are pretty obvious. They're pretty easy to spot if the mold isn't, horribly cloudy. And if you see any, you just go back in with your toothpick kind of to the spot where it was. It's always, usually going to be on the very end or tip of something. And you're just going to guide that air bubble out to an open area to get rid of it. Because if you don't, you're going to have a spot missing in your mold. The details in these things are so tiny, it is noticeable. The next thing I'm going to do is I want these skinny, teeny little feet. I want them to have like a tab of gel to hang on to in the main body of the mold. So I am going to paint up into the body a little bit, just so there's some substance in there for the feet to attach to, or to stay attached to the whole body. The last thing we want to do before we cure this part, take whatever little detail tool you have that will clean up wet gel. I love these toothpicky Q-tip things, and clean up everything around your casting, because it's going to be 50 times harder to do that once the thing is cured, because these parts are so tiny, and especially those feet, that's going to tend to be the area where you need to clip some extra, like the flashing it's called, off of it. And it's going to be so hard to do it because those feet are just going to want to snap off. So just keep it clean as you go. Even though it's a pain and it takes longer to do, you're going to thank yourself later. Okay, now you can fully cure it. But once you have cured gel in these molds, you do not want to pry it, spread it back open again, because anything wet that you put in to finish it off can then ooze in front of what is already cured, and you will see a noticeable line in the face of your little cast. It's now time to pour the acrylic powder. So just gently, that powder, just really easily. It does not clog. That is the one great thing about this acrylic powder and doing it in a little bottle. It just flows nicely out of it. Just sort of, tap it, but just be slow and gentle, because it's so fine. It can easily, and kind of like fling everywhere. Even using this toothpick, I kind of didn't need to, and stuff was starting to fling around because it's so lightweight. Now I'm going to start dropping my monomer in, just a couple drops, and I am just wetting all of the dry powder. And now I'm just going to continue. I'm going to do a little cleanup with the brush, mush that stuff into the space where I want it while it hasn't hardened yet. This is a super easy, quick way to clean up. It's much easier to clean up than wet gel, because it still just keeps wanting to get everywhere. And basically now we're just going back and forth to backfill this mold. And we can use the brush finally in the end to kind of flatten the whole area. Use the side of the brush to kind of get that inner curvature like the mold has. And that way it will sit nicer There, now I'm sort of starting to do that and sit nicer on the nail. This is so much quicker than having to cure multiple layers of gel, and so much safer because even when you do that, it still may not be curing properly. So this is a perfect solve, especially on dark objects and shapes, dark colors. Use acrylic, and then you don't have to worry about uncured gel sitting on your nails for 3 weeks. The only thing about this, it's going to take a little longer for that monomer to evaporate off because it's in a semi-enclosed area. So you do this and you just set it to the side for a couple of minutes and just kind of poke at it and check it every now and again. It's still not that long. It's still shorter than curing 80 million layers of gel for a minute each time. Okay, it's the moment of truth. Let's get this puppy out of here. Just gently start pulling it out, and for these teeny, delicate, little thin areas, just gently keep suggesting to it that it should pop off of that and be free. And then it will do it eventually. And since we did all of that cleanup beforehand, now we just have a cast that is ready to use. And once we pop this out of the mold, it's always a good idea to cure that again with the front side facing up. And at least on the black, I have no indication of where that gel ended and where the acrylic started. I can't guarantee that on every color. You might have to experiment a little. So some colors, maybe you might need to, do a couple layers fully of gel and then just backfill with some sort of acrylic, whether that is clear, something that kind of matches the color you're doing, or a black. But for black and on the molds, everything turns out a sort of matte color. To glue this on our nail, we are going to use a semi-solid non-UV glue. We can then go back and seal the edges with like a UV product that you'd use for like jewels and etc. But we literally just did all of this so that we did not have uncured gel in our nail. The other fun thing you can do with the acrylic powder is you can mix in other powdered pigments like glow-in-the-dark stuff. So, there's a whole world of interesting possibilities by using this combo of acrylic powder and gel. And it solves the problem of dark colors. I love it.